We're recording.
Okay, so hello. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Julian Walters. I'm Professor of Gastroenterology at Imperial College London. Stephen and I are really pleased to welcome you to this special meeting of our so-called BASIC, B-A-S-I-C group to celebrate the life and work of Alan Hofmann. So our group was set up as a forum to discuss bile acids in the small intestine and colon, BASAIC. We've had 2 face-to-face meetings, and in the last year we've been holding research meetings every few months via Zoom. So our principal interest was shared with Alan, what bile acids do and how this affects the intestine. So we are very glad so many people have joined us here today, and we're particularly honoured that members of Alan's family could be here, including Helly, Anthea, Cecilia, Carolyn, and many of Alan's grandchildren are here, I think, as well. So we want to start this meeting by hearing from Alan himself, who made this recording that I am about to play for you as part of a large collection of his memories, up to 36 volumes. We can share these files by email later, so you can see much more of his life than we can possibly cover in this short tribute. So let me see if I can share my screen and then play this video. So let's play this from Alan.
Jetzt was, er zeigt einen Film. Ja. Er muss nur die Technik jetzt finden. Warum ist bei mir steht Marion Wurster? Weil ich das bin. Ja.
Can I just remind everybody to mute their mics while Julian is playing this video?
Yeah, so let's just start again. Okay, this is fairly quiet, I'm afraid. Okay, I'm not sure if you could all hear it or not, but let's hear okay, what Alan's saying. Sort of, if you could be on mute, please, unless you're actually talking.
We're not seeing it, Julian.
Okay, that's because I've not shared it, that's why. Okay, maybe you can share now. Okay, so this is the Zoom technology that as we get older, it's harder to do.
Oh, I got it. Oh my goodness.
Can't hear Julian.
Okay.
Julian, the sound is not coming through at the moment.
I know. Okay, I've just realized I have to share this with sound. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning.
Hello, I'm Alan Hofmann, born in Baltimore in 1931. Lived many places. Had 2 medical degrees, one from Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, one from the University of Lund in Sweden. Have worked in Baltimore, New York, Bethesda, Lund, Rockefeller in New York, and the Mayo Clinic before coming to California. Wonderful experiences, had wonderful colleagues, had the great luck to be able to explore a new area. And this video is a story of my life, which I thought my children, their children, their children's children might be interested in. It's not all that it could have been, but it's more than it might have been.
So this is a wonderful start to this celebration of Alan's life. Okay, for those of you who don't know him very well, he was born in 1931. He grew up in Baltimore, attended Johns Hopkins University, a medical school, worked in Lund in Sweden in the early 1960s, the Mayo Clinic from 1966 to 77, when he moved to UC San Diego. Sadly, he passed away on September the 7th, 2021, as you know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Stephen Keeley and I have both been greatly influenced by Alan, and we thought that this was a good way to use our meeting, and we're so pleased so many people are here. We know so many people have been influenced by his knowledge, his guidance, and his enthusiasm for the world of bile acids. In my case, this was mostly in the last 15 years, although I have known him for 40 years, relating to the mechanisms and the treatment of bile acid diarrhea. I am immensely grateful for his advice and his encouragement, given gently, with humor, and with great insight. I know so many others here have had similar experiences, and I am pleased we are joined by colleagues who have known him for most of his 60-year career. We form his worldwide scientific family. I look forward to hearing so many stories from his long life in the next hour or so. Stephen, will you say something now?
Yeah, I just want to share my screen. Can you see my blank screen there?
Yes.
Yeah, so I just really wanted to echo Julian's sentiments and welcome me all here today for Alan's memorial. It's really fantastic to see so many people who just wanted to come here today to remember him and to pay tribute to him. And in preparing for this meeting, we decided we wanted to call it a celebration of the life and work of Alan. And because although it's a sad time for us all when we're mourning him, it's also a time for us to celebrate. Almost every one of us here, we're lucky enough to have crossed paths with Alan's during his lifetime, and as a consequence of that, we've had the benefit of him impacting our lives in so many different ways. So for some people that impact might have been quite small, and for others it might have been life-changing. And I think for me, I'm one of those that it was life-changing for.
Stephen,
yeah.
Stephen, we can see your screen, but we can't see any slides at the moment.
I haven't done anything yet, Julian.
Okay.
So my experience with Alan has started in 1995, and I came from Dublin to San Diego to do a postdoc with Kim Barrett. So Kim's lab is right next door to Alan's at UCSD. And I'd often bump into this enigmatic man, you know, as I was walking down the corridors or when we'd meet at GI division meetings, and we'd have some nice chats, but I didn't really know him. I didn't really understand why he was so interested in bile acids. And indeed, I didn't really understand why anybody would be interested in bile acids back then. But that changed in about 1999, and I was given a seminar to the GI division. And he came up to me afterwards and he just casually suggested to me that I might do a particular experiment. And it was the most simple of experiments. It involved deoxycholic acid and it involved colonic epithelial cells. And sure enough, hopefully I can get my slides to work now. Yeah. So sure enough, the experiment that he suggested to me gave us a very interesting result, and you can see that here. And you'll be pleased to hear. I'm not going to try and explain the details of this experiment here, but I think suffices to say, this experiment that he suggested to me led to more experiments, and they led to more experiments, and even more experiments, and so on. And so now, 20 years later, I feel we still have a lifetime's work to do, and try and figure out what's going on here. So this was what Alan's gift to me was. I think with that one simple suggestion, he literally handed to me the path that my research career would follow. I didn't think I was going to tear up. So as I've followed along that career path, I've had great opportunities then to introduce some of the next generation of researchers. Natalia Lychak-McGinley, Ciara Fallon, Jessica Smith, Katrina Curley, and Claire Sweeney. They're all working in my lab on projects that directly come from this experiment that Alan suggested to me all that time ago. So I have lots of good memories of Alan. Whether he's given a seminar at various conferences and meetings, loads of lunches and dinners, meeting at the UCSD Faculty Club. I also have one of these pictures of Alan with his iconic license plate. But probably my fondest memory is when he and Helly came to Dublin back in 2018 for the Falk International Bile Acid meeting. So for those of you who don't know, the Falk meeting is probably the premier meeting for people in our research field around the world. And it was a great honour to be able to host it in Dublin. And I think Helly and Alan had a good time when they were there. So here we see Alan doing all the things that he likes to do. Here he is talking to his good friend Aldo Rhoda about the mysteries and the complexities of bile acids. He's having dinner and he's having drinks with his friends in a traditional old Irish pub there. You see him chairing a seminar, and he even had time to meet with my family and to reconnect with my partner Lona, who was also a really good friend of his when we were from our time in San Diego. So to finish off, I just want to say thanks to Alan. I want to thank him for steering me onto my research path that I could be passionate about and that would stay with me for such a long time. And thank him for guiding me along the way and for giving me some lovely memories. So I just want to say cheers to Alan with my special mug, if it's coming out here. No, I can't get it. I have a mug that says Heart Bile Acids that was given to me as a gift by one of my students. So yeah, okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks. Okay, so it's moving to hear how he changed your life. Now, someone who has known him for a very, very long time, who I have also known for a very long time, is Herman Dowling, who was Professor of Gastroenterology at the University of London. Okay, so Herman sort of introduced me to the world of bile acids, but I think had worked with bile acids and with Alan for maybe 20 years before he told me about this. So Herman, would you like to say a few words about Alan now?
Thank you, Julian. Can I just confirm the sound is coming through okay?
Yes, it is.
It is. Well, I feel very privileged to be in this distinguished company, and in particular, I think we would all like to say greetings and enormous support to Helga, who's with us at the moment. Helga, nice to see you, and we will be in touch with you soon again. Well, it's a great pleasure to pay tribute to Alan, to Cecilia, and to his family here. The story of my involvement with Alan began in the mid-1960s. I'd spent a couple of years at the postgraduate school working with Chris Booth, and then went on a Medical Research Council traveling fellowship to Boston for 2 years to work with the late Freinds Singlefingers. Give me a call coming through. And traveling to the States, we went by boat, and I was working on some papers at the time. And these papers included work by Alan Hofmann. And this was work with his Swedish mentor, Bengt Bogström, from Lund, where Alan had worked. So I knew of Alan's work at that time, and I arrived to work with Ingelfinger, but in the end didn't work directly with Freinds Ingelfinger, who was the boss, but with Donald Small. And many of you in this room will remember Don Small, who also passed away fairly recently. Don had been to Paris. He trained in physical chemistry with Dervisia at the Institut Pasteur, and he was particularly interested in bile acids, and this was my introduction to bile acids. The reason for my involvement was because my boss, Chris Booth, had been working on vitamin B12 absorption, showed that it was in the terminal ileum, and showed that it could be used as a clinical test using the Schilling test to assess ileal function or dysfunction. And at one of our journal clubs, I read a paper by Tyre and Lack and Wiener from Duke University, showing that the bile acids were also actively transported exclusively in the terminal ileum. And my original idea was we should try and develop a simple test because we might maybe have a test for bile acid malabsorption. Well, that was the idea. We never pursued it because Donald Small introduced me to different things, and we were working on the relationship to lipid composition and gallstones. I first met Alan, although I cited his work. I first met him when he came to give a seminar with Don Small, because he and Don were writing a famous review, which many of you will remember at the time. And Alan came along. He had his exuberant personality. He was the most lively, vivacious person. He was great fun. And these are the personal aspects I think I'd like to draw attention to, as well as his wonderful scientific contributions. He's one of the most original minds available, but he was unique. Alan and I then decided to try and write a book together to talk about the role of bile acids in the formation and treatment of gallstones. And this field was advancing so rapidly, we never got a chance to finish it. But it did mean we had the privilege of working together in many parts of the world. In San Diego, where he and Heli entertained me very royally on many occasions. And when Alan was in Britain, but also when we met in Italy and in Germany and Munich, even in the Florida Keys. You see, all work is not is also sometimes a bit of play. So I'd like, before discussing more about science, just to say a little bit about Alan and his personality, and indeed that of Heli, because they were a wonderful pair. They were most vivacious, lively, amusing people. They were exuberant, they were extrovert, they were enthusiastic. And Alan used to say, the world is full of grey men. And that's the last thing you could use as a description for Alan and Heli, particularly together, particularly when they've had a glass of wine, particularly when they have been at one of Herbert Falk's meetings. When the Oompa band would be playing in the background, Alan would don a cap with a big feather on it and attempt to conduct the orchestra and fail miserably, and roars of laughter. That's one image of Alan. The other image is when we went to many meetings in Cortina d'Ampezzo with our friends from the University of Bologna. And I'm delighted to see that Aldo Roda is here because he will remember these wonderful meetings. We worked very hard, at least from 7 or 8 in the morning till midday. And then we went to the ski slopes. And the first of these meetings was in 1975. And Alan, I think, had never been on skis before, but he was enthusiastic. And he claimed after skiing down the slope that his main function in life was to make everybody else look good on the ski slopes. This is Alan's wonderful sense of humor. He will be sorely missed. He was a brilliant scientist. He was a wonderful supporter of young people. And I'm very privileged to be here and taking part in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Herman.
So one tiny little thing. I don't know if you can see, but I'll hold this up. Can you see this image?
Yes.
This is a picture of Alan and Heli, my wife Ellen and I, and it's taken in the House of Lords. And Alan was dressed in his usual subdued way with a flamboyant pink bow tie. He usually had a silk handkerchief draping out of his pocket if it didn't fall on the ground. So this is part of this wonderful, happy, but brilliant man. Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Heli.
Thank you very much, Herman. I know that you and Alan and Gustav Baumgartner particularly have gone back a long way. I don't know if Gustav is able to join us today. I don't think he is he?
I don't think he's here, Julian.
No, okay. So many people want to talk. Is Nick LaRusso here? Okay, we put together a running order, sort of trying to get some of the people from a long time ago. I don't think Nick is necessarily here at the moment. Maybe we can call on him a bit later on. And is Hans Ulrich still here, or has he fallen off the boat? Hans Ulrich, would you like to say a few words now?
Yeah.
Okay, so Hans Ulrich Marshall is professor in Göteborg.
So proud that I can.
I'm afraid your bandwidth is very poor.
Participate. I think I'm very proud that I can participate in this wonderful meeting. And I'm on a boat, and I'm afraid that the mobile net will pass away quite soon. Can you hear me, Julian?
We can hear you. Okay, it's much better just on audio. Yes.
Yes, only audio.
Have a go. Yeah.
Yeah. I would not be where I am now without this invaluable support by Alan. You met the very
I don't think this is going to work, I'm afraid, Hans Ulrich.
It's always very critical in the pilot research. Happy that I could participate. So I say thank you that I was invited, and I have so much invaluable support of Alan, and I'm so thankful to him. Thank you.
And thank you very much for the pictures that you shared with us earlier. And we will show those pictures as part of the slideshow at the end of this meeting.
Okay, thanks, Hans Ulrich. We want to move on now to one of Alan's oldest friends. That'd be Aldo Roda at the University of Bologna. Aldo, are you here?
Yes. Okay. Good morning from the States and afternoon in Europe. And I'm very happy to be here, and then very honored to be, because for me Alan was a maestro of life, maestro in my career. I want to thank very much my first meeting with Alan in 1975, and so I want to share with you today only some good memory that with myself, with Alan and our group in Italy, in Bologna, and then I will show a couple of slides and not want to enter in more detail about science and so on. Let me share if I can. Okay. Can you see the?
Yep, got it.
Very nice.
Okay, this was my first, the first time that I met Alan was in the Mayo Clinic in the 1975. I was a very young fellow coming from Italy with few words in English, nothing, and Alan opened everything there up and teach me how to play. I am a chemist. Alan liked to play with chemists, with analytical chemistry, physical chemistry. He loved that is part of the science. And he trained all the fellows to work on basic, to develop radioimmunology, gas chromatography, and so on. At that time, many very distinguished fellows and scientists in the future, like Van Bergen, Goven, Charles, Nicola Russo, and Norfield from Cormac were present in the team of Alan, working with John Tissot for the cholesterol Goldstone dissolution. So this was my first time that motivated by the Goldstone dissolution, by the discovery and the therapy of with chenodeoxycholic acid, he attracted many people from around the world. And so in Bologna, we organized just in 1975 the first meeting on bile acid as a series of many every year. For many years we did this. We tried to compete with the German, with the Eberfunk meeting, but we are Italian, so we did a different way to play with. We try to combine science and fun, as Herman said before. So to ski during the day and to work in the afternoon and to have a lot of fun in the night. And this I've been in this fantastic hotel Miramonti, Austrian style in Cortina. Just one example of the first speaker was Herman Dowling, Alan Hofmann, and John Tissot were present for the first conference we made in 1975. I was on a symposium on pathophysiology and treatment of cholesterol Goldstone. And Alan was always the president and the main actor. All the people are waiting for Alan coming every year to listen the novelty, the new advances in any kind of bile acid research field. So I was very happy about that. And then this motivated was a sort of myself aggregation of friends. And then you can see a cartoon with Alan Hofmann, Martin Carey, Hermon Dowling, and myself, not yet bold like Hermon, but still okay. And then my brother and John Thistle, Donna Small, and other Italian friends. This was really a nice opportunity to share and to learn from the distinguished scientists all around the world, and then to have a lot of exchange and scientific exchange and debate and discussion. It was very, very nice. And of course, as I almost said, Alan was not a good skier. He tried this with myself, do cross-country ski. So in this way, he tried to survive with John Thistle and Alan, myself. And we did this in 1978, for example, a cross-country ski. And then this another example where we sit down around the table. You can see Alan, Ellie, beautiful wife here, and Serge Erlanger from France, Hermon Dowling, smoking. I don't know if they're smoking, maybe yes, at that time. I cannot see if you, but let me check if this was correct or not. So we had a chance to have a lot of fun around the table and discussing about science and friendship and so on. It was very, very nice period, fantastic period. And we made for Alan so many cartoons when Alan was our director, you know, the enteropathic circulation. And Alan became crazy because something that doesn't work well, and then trying to explain well. And this was the big competition when they also come, and the keynote was a little bit not in good health, and they also improved. It was a big competition in that time that opened a debate, a debate which is the better keynote or also, and the mechanism of action. We were in a pre-receptor or molecular biology era, just an enzyme or something that very primitive period, but fascinating. Many experiments been done. Then my most important opportunity in my life was to work with Alan for more than 1 year in his new lab in San Diego when I visited him in '91. Alan tried to say, okay, Alan, you are a chemist, you have to work with chemists and so on, and then we had to share a business, something together. So I had a chance to work with Carol Meitzels, that one of the most distinguished scientists around the world in fast tension measurement and in the critical micellar concentration. So under the Carol's supervision and Alan, we did a lot of work, and we published one of the papers that probably is one of the most cited papers on the relationship between bile acid structure and self-association in eco solution. So this was very, very nice opportunity that I had to work with Alan. Also with Alan during a party, I remember with Alan, Eli, in a party in a Uri house in a UCSD, we met an Italian. Okay, there is an Italian. So I met Roberto Pellicciari, and then just because I didn't know him before, just because we stayed together with Alan, and then Alan promote a sort of collaboration to work with with Roberto. So once back to Italy, we start to work with Roberto Pellicciari. We did a lot of effort in designing new analog, new also deoxycholic acid and other compound. And Roberto alone started and was the founder of Intercept, basically. And then he has a company, and then probably is the father, the inventor of the OCA, obeticholic acid compound. So this is a very nice opportunity that Alan gave me to work with a good scientist and to stimulate further collaboration for my future. So at this point, for me, always I try to listen to him. The father that told me, Aldo, you have to think about that. So we had a lot of discussion together, a lot of fun. And then this was people know about us. This is a classical. Alan liked the physical chemist, no way. He liked to be surrounded by more than basic scientist than clinician. He liked to share research with the you can see the list of the name here. There are many famous scientists. There's Carol Meisel, Alan, myself, and then you can see other friend here that Martin Carey, Donald Small. There are so many good scientists doing basic study on bile and bile acid story. And this was done in Santa Barbara in the Clark Foundation villa house, and that was a nice event full of history. Alan visits us in Italy often, with Eli coming visit in Bologna and Perugia, in many places in Italy. He spent almost 1 year of sabbatical, Alan, in Turin, worked with Molino and Milanese doing the pharmacokinetics model. At that time was really a very advanced one to this multi-compartmental study of how to play with the PK of the bile acid and so on in Turin. And then we had very happy to have Anna as a doctor, his honorary degree in medicine at the University of Bologna. It was a very nice event, very important, very glad that that Alan is a part of our university. Then we had so many other opportunities. Alan, look at with Eli, Alan coming and visit us. For instance, we take one day from Bologna go to Ferrara to see in the Po Valley, in the Delta del Po. It's like the Camargue in France, something like that. We had a lot of cold weather, fun, good food, and then we enjoy this special event. This was a good memory for that. And you know, I visit Alan. You know, I move doing research in the last 20 years more devoted to other things like biosensor, because I'm an analytical chemist, and a little bit less on bile acid, but still working on bile acid, particularly in analytics on bile acid. So I have a chance to visit Alan every year. We went to the campus or to have fun, to discuss. We discuss, we have a good food, nice view, but we are always talking about science, about bile acid was the major point. And then Alan convinced Ellie to make a design of the telepathic circulation on silk. This is a very important thing that we share. You can see all the friends. A meeting in Freiburg with Ellie. Ellie was a very nice artist, a very nice color picture. I have one picture of one paint from Ellie from Tuscany with the color of a cypress in Tuscany. That's fantastic. She has a beautiful color, and then she's a very nice artist. And then I'm very happy to have some part of it. And here with some friends, very happy. And then now let's something interesting. You saw in the picture of Santa Barbara all the people dressed this sweater here. I still have here. This is a vintage. But you can see here the Kroc Foundation chemistry. But on the back, look at that. Veritas et amicitia manius macus magnanimitates. Truth and friendship are a great key to magnanimitatis, great of mind and earth. So this was the Alan coming at the conference with a car full of this sweater to distribute to all the participants, and then we were happy to dress and then to collect. I still have this in my home, and then this is exactly the means of Alan, good scientist. You have a friend. When you are a friend of Alan, you are really a friend of Alan. Alan is really a friend, and then he combined this of great mind, intelligent, with a lot of earth. And so this is the main goal of Alan. Then and said, so the best is I said, ciao. Sorry, Alan is one of the last in the campus. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Aldo.
Thank you, Aldo. That was great. Yeah, lovely memories. Okay, so, and that nice to see Alan waving to us
It's a
there.
great picture, yeah. I think that's at UCSD, isn't it?
Yes, in the campus, yeah. We always go in there, traveling and then discussing about bilances and so on.
This
Every
is
year.
from the
Every year. Yeah.
faculty club.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Close to the faculty club, exactly. We were there, yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you, Aldo, for sharing your screen. Somebody else, okay, who knew him from a long time ago, is Ian Gilmore, Professor Sir Ian Gilmore. He's been president of the Royal College of Physicians of London. He's been president of the British Society of Gastroenterology, but I think his greatest claim to fame was that he was Alan's fellow. So I think Ian's here, and would Ian like to say something? And if Aldo could stop sharing his screen, we can see Ian.
Absolutely, I'd love to say something, and I hope I'm not on mute.
No, we can hear
Okay,
you.
we can hear
It's
you.
wonderful that Helly and the girls are here, and we've enjoyed meeting them over the years. You know, it was 40 years ago that Richard Thompson, who'd been a fellow of Alan's in the Mayo, suggested I might try and spend a year with Alan. And my very good fortune was that he had just moved from colder climes. Many of you will remember that Alan was actually recruited as a package with Bill Summerskill, who was the chief of gastroenterology at the Mayo, and Alan was the chief of research. But sadly, Bill Summerskill died before he could make that move. So for the first period in San Diego, Alan was pushed into being chief of gastroenterology, as well as head of research, before John Eisenberg came in to take over the clinical role. And I think Alan wouldn't mind me saying that he found this clinical role somewhat uncomfortable, but he could always think of an experiment to do on any patient. I wasn't licensed to practice in California, but I was sent occasionally to see a jaundice patient on the ITU to see if I could contribute anything to the management. But outside the ward and in the lab and the seminar room, Alan has been without equal and has continued contributing right through to the age of 90. And he was such a kind and generous host when I was that first international fellow in San Diego. Within weeks, he took me to a meeting in Mexico City. And I well remember after a few margaritas, and I think Alan was wearing a traditional Mexican hat at the time, he discovered that his wallet had disappeared. Now, that's not entirely unusual in Mexico City, and he took it philosophically. On the way back into California, it took about an hour for him to persuade the immigration that he was not an illegal immigrant. But the amazing part of the story is about 37 years later, while they were revamping the lecture theatre where the conference was held, they found Alan's wallet behind the back of a seat. It still contained the dollars, but they were worth a lot less than when he'd left it 38 years earlier. My other memory, seeing the girls, Anthea and Cecilia, was that within a few days of us arriving with our child of 3 months off the plane, Alan said we must go down to the old town for a meal with them. So my wife Hilary was very anxious about leaving the 3-month-old son. I don't think he'd been left before. But anyway, Alan's daughters rallied round, but it became very clear that my wife was very agitated during the meal about leaving the child behind. So Alan volunteered to phone home after a couple of hours. This was all before mobile phones. And he came back to say all was well. The baby had answered the telephone. That didn't help my wife's anxiety. Alan was a highly acclaimed fellow of the Royal College of Physicians, and it was wonderful to be able to host him there when I was president. And the last time I met Alan with Helly was when we met them when they were staying at their second home in southern Germany, when we were visiting other friends in that part of the world. And it was absolutely great, and it just has been a continuity of friendship over 40 years. I've always remembered his description of another fellow, I'm pleased it wasn't me, saying that the fellow preferred problems to solutions. Since then, I've made sure to prefer solutions to problems, and it's not an overstatement to say that Alan changed my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Very moving.
Thanks, Ian. So I think next up to say a few words this afternoon, I think we have Roberto Pellecciari, who also goes back a long way with Alan. Roberto, are you there?
Hear me?
Hello, Roberto.
Good.
Hello. Okay, I'm very honored and thank you for inviting me. This gives me the opportunity to say a few words and share a few slides on the influence that Alan had on my career, on my life. The next slide. If I can have, oh yeah, I will put them. Okay. In this first slide, let me say that we all know that Alan has been a spearhead of bile acid for 60 years, going from the role from the detergent to drugs, in my case to obeticholic acid. From detergents to bile acid as signaling agent to bile acid analogs. If you see the two papers below, this is 60 years. This is the first paper that I found. It's a Nature paper in 61 when Alan was in University of Department of Physiology with Bengt Borgström in Lund. And you see that was a paper on the mechanism of bile acid as detergent, micellar solubilization of fatty acid by bile acids. And on the right side, you can see probably the last paper on 2021, 60 years, on obeticholic acid improves hepatic bile acid excretion in patients. So you can see from detergents to drugs, this is an unbelievable career. And let me share a few words on what I've been going through with Alan and how influenced my real work. Next slide. You see that this is a paper of 67 in the Annual Review of Medicine by Alan Hofmann and Donald Small, from Small Triangle that you all know, Small. And you see, this is a very nice aphorism. To study the phenomenon of disease without books is to see uncharted sea, while to study books without patients is not to go to sea at all. And bile salts, this apply for to consider the function of bile salt in ignorance of the physical properties is to be deprived of many helpful concepts. This is the concept, because in other words, he went from detergents to physical, to physiology. And then in the next slide, he went to physiology to physico-chemical properties. You know, from detergents to properties to physiology, from physiology to physico-chemical properties. And this was a review from Aldo Roda that I was very pleased to see we are still collaborating after 40 years. And so he introduced the chemistry in the physiology. He was the one to synthesize chenodeoxycholic acid when he was a young fellow in Lund. As Aldo was saying before, he has always been fond of chemistry, physico-analytical chemistry, organic chemistry. In my case, in the next slide, this is the encounter that Aldo was talking for. And by the way, it was October 81. I was a young visiting professor, and just to see the difference, how it changed my life. This was my course. I was teaching mechanism in organic chemistry. And then I met, as Aldo was saying, Alan in a party in the cliffs of San Diego, La Jolla. And he came to my office in UCSD in the Department of Chemistry with Aldo. And he said, Roberto, what are you doing? You should work on bile acid. I said, should work what? bile acid is the future. And then I was really an organic chemist, and I say, well, there were two factors: the exuberance of Aldo Roda, that you all know, and the convincing power of Alan. So I decided to work on bile acid. And in the next slide, so it really changed my life and my career. And then if you may have seen this letter, this was the few months after, in 82. It is Roberto, why the hell you think you are working on bile acid? No one wants to work on them. However, I should tell you that in contrast to sex steroid, where there is a large body of scientists, the bile acid community is relatively small. Indeed, this has not been considered a very important area of research until the therapeutic usage of bile acid was discovered. There is the remote possibility that bile acid will turn out to regulate the receptors. So bile acid will suddenly become of immense importance to the biochemical community, but today this has not happened. So he was already a visionary in the sense of thinking that there would be a receptor for bile acid. So in collaboration with Aldo, next slide, we start working together, and we did our best to fulfill the predicament, the vision of Alan, that bile acid would become of immense importance. You saw from Aldo the group of people that he assembled in the Ray Kroc Foundation. You see here Ray Kroc. This was the dinner. There were no hamburgers, but was a fantastic chef. And you see around the table, Aldo, myself, Donald Small, and Alan Hofmann. And the title of this Kroc meeting was The Physical Chemistry of Bile in Health and Disease. So what was missing at the time was to go. So Alan had gone from detergent to physiology, from physiology to physical chemistry. What was missing to go from to find the correlation between the physical chemistry and structure. And that's where I entered. We synthesized many molecules, and this was a beginning of a collaboration that still continues. And again, it was 4 years ago. And along all these years, we have been in touch with Alan and Eli, that I was very glad to see at the beginning of the meeting. Ciao, Eli. Very pleasure to see you. And next slide. Oh, by the way, you see the cook there. And so we started a story that I don't have the time to go through, but you see some players. And this is the story of bile acid. And so I was lucky in 81 to find Aldo and Alan. Can you hear me?
Okay, I've muted everybody there. Roberta, could you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Where did I left? You saw the slide before?
You were just beginning this slide, really?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me when I was talking? Metti quella prima.
Yeah, we said that was fine.
Yeah.
Okay, next slide. So from there, this was the beginning in 81 with Aldo and Hofmann of a very long road. You can see here that with Aldo, that you see in the photo, and his group on the right side, we started a very long collaboration until 92, 93. Then I was interested in other projects. We remained friends with Alan, with Aldo, but I was working on other topics, glutamate receptor, canurine pathway of tryptophan, until 99. In 99, there was the discovery by GSK and this group in the research triangle in North Carolina of EFXR as a EFXR receptor. So I start again working on bile acid. Of course, I had an immense amount of experience through the work with Alan and Aldo. We published many papers together. We had patents together. But now I had with my group the possibility to know where to go. And so in 99, the AFXR receptor was discovered. Obeticholic acid was synthesized in my group in end of 99, so very quickly. And the first experiment was for the anti-cholestatic activity was done. You see the small picture of Carlo Clerici. And on the left side, there are the first experiment of ligated duct in which, surgically, the biliary duct was ligated. And we gave the obeticholic acid, and we saw the effect on liver, the positive effect on liver of reestablishing the biliary flow. This was the first experiment. By the way, Carlo Clerici, which is also in the audience, was let's say, a graduate student in San Diego with Alan for a couple of years. So, and also his experience came from there. And then the story of obeticholic acid continued with Intercept. Mark Tuchalski, which has given so many efforts, all his intelligence to the development of obeticholic acid in Intercept Pharmaceutical. And then there was David Shapiro as CMO, you all know him. And then in 2016, obeticholic acid was approved by FDA. So this is a very long story. And as you can see, all started from Alan Hofmann coming to my lab and say, Roberto, go to the road of Damascus and convert yourself. Biolacid is the future. And I was so crazy to believe him. And so I want to tell you this story. Next slide. So this is the final slides. On the top, there is a phrase that I remember from Erwin Mosbach. I don't know whether you remember Erwin Mosbach. He was the one with Alan Hofmann discovered the role of cholesterol in the formation of gallstones. He was in the public health research. And you see, I was very impressed by his phrase. Whenever I go to the podium to give a paper on biolacid, everyone leaves the room. These were the early 80s. And so I followed Alan's advice, taking the less traveled road. And here we are. Now, biolacid is a fantastic community. It's really what Alan was anticipating. Biolacid will become one day of immense importance. So I was very grateful to Alan for giving me this opportunity, not only scientific, but also, as Aldo Roda was saying, of life. So, and I think that his legacy will continue. His scientific, 60-year scientific legacy, fantastic in so many fields. And also, as many of you have already remembered, as style of life, enthusiasm, empathy, and immense scientific capacity. So thank you, Alan, and ciao, Eli, and thank you to all of you.
Thank you very much, Roberto. It's amazing to go back through and see how he's influenced so many people so deeply. Jim Boyer, Professor Jim Boyer from Yale, has been working in bile acids and related areas for many years as well, and I'm sure goes back 60 years knowing Alan. So Jim, if you'd like to say something now, okay, we'll be very pleased to hear.
Well, thank you very much, Julian. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
It's a privilege to be amongst all of you and to see you. And Heli, it's wonderful to see you as well here. You know, I first met Alan in 1964, almost 60 years ago. He was at the Rockefeller Institute at the time doing postgraduate work. And I was a second-year medical resident at New York Hospital, which was right next door in New York. A group of us shared a car ride down to Atlantic City for the spring meetings. This is where the medical spring meetings used to be held. Few of you may remember that. And I don't remember who was in the car other than the fact that I remember Alan like it was yesterday. He was so excited. He was sitting in the back seat next to the window. I was on the other side of the window. Poor guy in the middle suffered from Alan's jumping up and down, his enthusiasm about the presentation that he was going to make at the Atlantic City meetings, his research. I mean, it was just incredible. And as I say, it was like yesterday when I think about that first time. And of course, later on, it was some years later, I realized that this behavior was not too far from the norm of Alan, that he was always very excited about what he was doing. And there really was only one time that I remember when Alan was subdued, when I saw him subdued. And that was in the middle 70s when he ruptured his Achilles tendon at the International Association for the Study of the Liver in Acapulco, sometime around 1974 or 5, I think it was. So it really was my privilege over the years to share many activities with Alan and Hilly, and particularly at the bile acid meetings, Falk meetings, which were a wonderful venue for so many of us. But also on the council of the ASLD, where we shared the time for a few years. And of course, it was always interesting and it was always fun. Over the years, of course, Alan was the go-to person for me for difficult questions about bile acids arose, and we continued to correspond at least several times a year. But what I really will remember most about Alan is his unbounding enthusiasm, his excitement for science, for the people that he was with, and for life. And of course, those bow ties. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim, for those lovely words. I remember his enthusiasm very much as well, and he would always have time for everybody. It was amazing. I don't know, he seemed to squeeze many more hours into his day than everybody else was able to do, I think. So next, to say a few words is somebody who worked closely with Alan in his lab and was there when I arrived in San Diego and helped me out a lot to get set up as well in UCSD, and that's Claudio Steingart. Claudio, can you say a few words?
Yeah, hello everybody. Thank you, Stephen and Julian, for the invitation and organizing this celebration. I was going to say a few words about Alan's influence in my life, which was enormous. But seeing all of you who I have heard many times from Alan, I decided to switch on the spot. And I will share with you a few pictures of what's behind all Alan's accomplishments and funny, interesting meetings he had with all of you. So let me share my screen. These are slides that were made for his 70th birthday at the Mayo Clinic, and where we collected some old pictures and scanned them. So one of the things that impressed me very much when I was in Alan's lab starting in 1985 was his enormous network of experts. Although he claimed that the only thing he did in the lab was just to man the phones, these were the days before email and even before fax. After any and every discussion, or we have some kind of problem, he'll pick up the phone, call one of his friends, and within a few hours have the absolute perfect answer, or decided that nobody knew the answer to the problem. So that was how things worked. But nothing could have been done without the help of Alan's assistants, Vicky Hubner, who really kept the lab going. And in the days before computers, she had to listen to Alan's recordings of letters and paper manuscripts that he dictated while driving his car down the freeway. And we did many things in the lab, which were actually 3 small rooms. One of those was Alan's semi-pharmaceutical development of cholylsarcosine as a replacement for bile acids. And we having a small operation, it was a real stretch. So we literally had to synthesize grams and grams of cholylsarcosine by the bucketful, and that stretched our resources. But it worked, and this was our first patient, the dog Kuopio. And what you see there are empty paint cans that actually contain the poop of the dog that then somebody had to analyze. And needless to say, all the people I'm showing you went to have very successful careers. Sally Longmire Cook became a surgeon, and Jan Liljenau became a department head at hospitals in Malmö and in Lund, like almost everybody who worked with Alan. Another project was to try to dissolve gallstones percutaneously by infusing a solvent into the gallbladder of patients. And that was done with this whitish looking device. And it was somewhat successful, but the whole approach was killed by the appearance of laparoscopic cholecystectomy. But Alan was not one to be shy about things. So since the solvent was MTBE, which is a gasoline additive, but considered safe, would dissolve in the tissues of the patient, there was a danger that the patients would smell the solvent. So he organized essentially a solvent tasting in the best way of a wine tasting, where all the members of the lab were supposed to give their opinion. And eventually we discovered that the solvent MTBE did not taste very well. And Alan was up there up front doing the work. I'm showing you this lab to tell you that all those wonderful bile acids that Alan distributed to all his collaborators all over the world came out of this very small one-room lab, most as a result of work of our assistant, Huang Tu-Ton Nu, who eventually had a nice career in various pharmaceuticals companies, and she's still working for Takeda. And although there are very few bile acid chemists active these days, this gentleman on the orange shirt is Professor Ida from Japan. And looking at the publications in PubMed, I can see that there are a large number of chemists in Japan still working on bile acids. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to reach any of them for this celebration, but something should be done over there. Another project of Alan was a survey of bile acids on as many species of vertebrates that one could find. And this was a work done by Lee Heggie, who is still at UCSD, now involved with analysis of bile acids and how they relate to the microbiome. And this was on the days before databases existed. So Lee had lists and lists of all the animals he had collected and analyzed the bile. And life in Alan's lab was not only work, but also the lab was, because of Alan, was warm, welcoming, and very, very often Alan, with the cooperation of our gracious host, Heli, would organize parties in his home. I can't remember who these people are, but Alan is wearing an Argentinian poncho that I must have brought for him from my native country. But not only was all about socials and culture, sometimes things got a little bit out of hand. I can't remember when this happened, but he, in his classical flamboyant style, he was participating in the festivities. And things didn't stay serious for too long. After every one of the fellows or foreign researchers left the lab, Alan and Haley would organize a party in their home, and where we had all kinds of funny events, typically organized by me. And I cannot remember what happened to these people. But the one on the left is Marco Lira Pedrin, who became an important gastroenterologist in the city of Tijuana. And Alan and I share our birthdays with 2 days of difference in May. So quite often we had double celebrations. And Alan was not shy. He was even open to testing alternative medicine. In this case, he was testing acupuncture. One of his secretaries was taking a course, and he decided to volunteer to demonstrate the technology. Unfortunately, he didn't do anything bad or good. And we had many, many pictures like this of various groups of collaborators in the lab. And looking at them through the years, you can see that Alan always looked the same. He never aged one bit, physically or mentally. And this is a very early one. And this is one of the most recent ones, pre-1996, when he had to close his lab. And he still looked exactly the same. And he was as personable with us, the people working in the lab, as he has been with all of you. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for these memories.
Brilliant, brilliant. That's marvelous to see so many people who pass through the lab and hear those memories. So we've been going for over an hour. As expected, about half of the people who wanted to say something have said something so far. So I think we will be going for a lot longer. So it's a good thing that Stephen extended the license on his Zoom so we can go for hours and hours. Because there is so much to say about Alan. All right, Mark Donovitz, Professor of Gastroenterology at Johns Hopkins University, wanted to say something. As you know, Alan was at Johns Hopkins. So Mark, please tell us your memory.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for letting me speak, Julian and Stephen. Yeah, so I have 2 areas to comment on about this wonderful person. As a young scientist, I was invited to San Diego for some unhappy times to give memorial talks for the death of Curtis Darmstathopor, and for John Eisenberg. Darm was one of the people that Alan took under his wing and helped him develop a wonderful career, though brief. At this meeting, Alan would get me into a room and hear what I was doing and enthusiastically tell me what was good and what wasn't good, and help me direct the area. I'm an epithelial transport person studying sodium hydrogen exchangers and chloride bicarbonate exchangers, and his comments to me were exceptionally helpful. The main area that I'm grateful to Alan for relates to Johns Hopkins. As you know, Alan went to Johns Hopkins on full scholarships in undergraduate and medical school, started from a relatively poor family, and was always grateful that Hopkins provided him this opportunity to get his career off the ground. Alan was so successful that he decided to pay back Hopkins by developing a named lectureship, the Alan Hofmann and Family Lectureship, which was given to the GI division and to the GI Core Center that I'm the principal investigator of. This is a series of 17 GI Core Centers, the purpose of which is to make GI research as good as it can be in a given institution. And Alan felt that that he wanted to provide something that would be meaningful scientifically and educationally to Johns Hopkins, and did it in the form of this named lectureship. the purpose of the lectureship was to expose young fellows, young faculty and senior faculty to outstanding investigators in gastroenterology who also made contributions to the clinical aspects. So we would invite absolute leaders like Jim Boyer himself, or Tashi Yamada, or people that that really represent the cream of gastroenterology. And Alan was named the first lectureship, as is appropriate, and came and exhibited all the things you heard about here: the enthusiasm to convince people to do science in a very thoughtful but enjoyable manner, the joy of science, the joy of the intellectual aspects. And it was a wonderful time that he came. Alan kept coming to these lectureships every year for many years. And it was always interesting to me because we had the very smartest people coming, but everybody's intellect was dulled by Alan's. He was always the center of the discussion. His ideas were always better than anybody else's. And as is typical of what you're hearing about, that was typical Alan. So Hopkins and our GI division and our GI center are very thankful to him and to Heli for allowing this lectureship to be formed. And it's really made a tremendous difference. It's the central point of our intellectual activities at Hopkins in the GI division every year. And I think we're doing just what Alan wanted, to encourage young people and to provide an environment in which there is joy and intellect going on simultaneously. So thank you for Alan, and thank you for letting me comment.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, that's wonderful to hear that.
Thanks, Mark. And I think the next person that we have up to speak today is another long-standing friend of Alan's, is Paul Dawson. Paul, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, I'm going to share a few slides, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about my personal experience with Alan, but also a little bit about his history. So if I can share screen, I can share screen here. So, yeah, and I would also like to thank Julian and Stephen for organizing this. It was, I had known Alan for about 30 years, not a short time compared to Jim Boyer and others, but his influence on me and I think many generations of individuals who have an interest in bile acids are certain were profoundly changed by Alan's influences. And in reading more, I've heard him recount these stories, but in reading more about his history, I really have to sort of remark about, it's remarkable that we were fortunate to have him in the bile acid field at all. As people have heard, he was born in Baltimore in 1931 to a family of really restricted means, and through his own pluck and hard work, and then the opportunities offered by Johns Hopkins, he was able to attend Johns Hopkins both for undergraduate and for medical school, and he. And here's a picture here. Alan is the from his medical class of 1950. This is from this picture is supposed to be from 1953, though this is the class of 1955. So, and my understanding was that Alan was actually a psychology major as an undergraduate, and we're so happy that he turned towards medicine and particularly bile acids. So he started in Baltimore and then went to New York for his residency there at Columbia Presbyterian, and then went back to DC to Bethesda to NIH for a short stint as a clinical associate, and there, people who know Alan know that he also played instruments and was interested in and had a deep interest in music. And it wasn't a very satisfying time, I understand, when he was there at the NIH, and he became interested in how fat is absorbed, and realized that the person that he needed to work with was in Stockholm at the time, Bent Bergstrom, and that he needed to work with this person to truly understand this. And so he applied for a fellowship, and then while waiting for his fellowship, he left the NIH and then was traveling in this sort of famous story with the National Symphony in its South American tour. And so it was in Peru that he heard that his fellowship would be funded, and then he was soon on to Lund and actually to forever change the bile-acid world after that. And so traveling then from the US to Lund, he and Bergstrom conducted some of the really groundbreaking work to elucidate the physical chemical properties of bile acids. And when we think of this is the time when they had to build your own instruments and think deeply about the physical chemical properties and physiology here, and it was really, I think, a role model for being able to for future generations to be able to sort of approach science in that way. And he's always described that as an incredibly productive period, an inspiring period, and it was also, I think, a notable period for the births of his daughters, Anthea and Cecilia, during that time. So I think it was a very happy sort of period in his life. And then for these discoveries regarding the digestion and absorption of lipids, the AGA recognized Alan Hofmann in 1970 with the Distinguished Achievement Award, and then Hofmann and Bergstrom with the William Beaumont Prize in 1979. And I think this was, and for this work, he received an MD, the PhD equivalent from Lund in 1965. And so I think it was really quite, with the sort of, I sort of describe it as a twinkle in his eye that Alan traveled back to Lund in 2015, where on May 29th of that year, he was celebrated as a Jubil Doctor, a Jubilee Doctor, an honorary doctorate that was awarded 50 years after the original doctorate. So Alan had shared this picture and described, I think he had just been from a meeting in Vienna and was soon on his way to Lund for this, and was very excited and I think had great satisfaction in being able to do this. So after coming back from Lund after this really successful period, he then traveled to Rockefeller for a period of time, and then worked with Scott Grundy and Ern Mosbach to again sort of driving the basic concepts involved in this, either cholesterol metabolism or in this case sort of calcium bile acid interactions. And here's a young Alan Hofmann at Rockefeller and at that time, and then traveled to the Mayo, where I think he had, and which was an incredibly productive period of time for him, where he could then establish many of the basic principles regarding the enterohepatic circulation and bile acid chemistry, and then take this tremendous interest in gallstones, and really sort of drove this interest that to understand the sort of potential of bile acid therapy as a potential for dissolution, gallstone dissolution, as Aldo has so nicely discussed. And then after this period in the Mayo, in this time he's publishing, there's hundreds of papers, and he's, if you look at his bio that he sent out, he'll break these up into different areas of bile acid biology that he's studied over the years. But there's wherever he's been, whether in Sweden, New York, Rochester, Minnesota, or San Diego, he's had this sort of remarkable energy, this love of life, and this passion about trying to understand what bile acids really do. And I think one of the things that I think is most one thing that Alan has done, I think, which is one of the most remarkable things, is that he's really served as an international ambassador of culinology, the study of bile acids, dating back from the earliest times. These are pictures of Alan from an early Falk meeting. There's a Falk meeting in 1976 where he's pictured with Hans Popper, Jan Yuval, Don Small, and then Alan here, and then attending one of the meeting that Aldo Rota talked about, the Kroc Foundation supported meetings, and then a picture here from the last Falk meeting in 2018 with the organizers, Verena and Stephen. So I think he's, in this way, he's energized and a whole new generations of physicians and scientists to really sort of understand and become passionate about these really interesting molecules. And this wouldn't have been possible without Heli, who's his companion. They're married in 1978 and steadfast. And no meeting, Falk meeting in particular, would be complete without visiting with Heli. And these are some pictures from several of the Falk meetings. This is from one of the meeting that was in Bologna in 2000, where the story is, so after the meeting, one of the Aldo and Enrico's fellows, Marco Montagnani, was taking a group of us to Venice to travel, and we were supposed to meet at the train station there in Bologna, and Marco and I are waiting there, and we're waiting, and then suddenly Alan and Heli show up late, and of course Alan had left his wallet in the taxi there on the way to the train station. There's a common theme there of Alan sort of leaving his wallet behind. I'm not sure exactly what the common denominator is, but fortunately the cab driver came back, and we were able to get his wallet, and then have a wonderful day in Venice with Alan in Heli, and here they are navigating the canals. And then this is really kind of this is a very wordy slide, but I just thought it was really, and then looking at it, I thought I should include it, is that one of the things, my own interests have been in bile acids and the ileal bile acid transporter, and clearly I would not have been able to do. Alan is my mentor and guide in this world, and he shared the history, and I think he one of the first discoveries he made as working with Bergström in Lund in the 1960s was to show that conjugated bile acids are absorbed in the distal but not proximal intestine, and verifying sort of earlier studies. And then sort of over this long history here, I think it's really fitting that, and Alan sort of coined the term organ warfare, where bile acids absorbed in the ileum were sort of inappropriately or potentially sort of damaging the liver. And he, since the late 1980s and early 1990s, had been a strong proponent of the potential of being able to inhibit ileal bile acid absorption using small molecules for hypercholesterolemia, and then later for cholestatic liver disease. So I think it was really fitting that this year, back in July, before Alan passed away, that the first IBAT inhibitor that owes so much to Alan's advances in bile acid research was approved for use in cholestatic patients in the US and in Europe. So Alan, you'll be greatly missed by all of us who knew you, and I prefer to think that you're off to onto another adventure, discovering a whole new worlds related to bile acids, and we'll and like for many of us here, we'll forever be in your debt. So thank you, thanks Stephen and Julian.
Thanks, Paul. That was really very nice.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. It's great to see it all in context. So next person, okay, on my list is Nick Davidson. So Nick and I have known each other for many years. We were at medical school together. Nick is chief of gastroenterology at WashU St. Louis, and I know has been influenced by Alan over the years. So Nick, tell us your story.
Thank you so much, Julian and Stephen. It's just such a privilege to hear so many moving reflections about Alan and his life. The fact that he built a cohesive, progressive scientific trajectory in bile acids sustained over 60 years is truly remarkable. So I did have the privilege of meeting Alan when I was a clinical scholar at Rockefeller University in the 80s. I attended a folk symposium and was very intimidated. I was in the presence of Professor Dowling and Professor Jim Boyer, and Alan was just remarkably gregarious and enthusiastic and nurturing and encouraging of young physician scientists. And so that's an enduring memory that I have of him. The other vignette that I wanted to share was in my career and interests in understanding the genetics of intestinal and hepatic lipid metabolism. I was an invited speaker at UCSD in 2011. I'm not sure whether Rohit would remember this, but and I gave a talk on a mouse knockout that we developed that has impaired chylomicron formation. And Alan was jumping up and down and came up and talked to me afterwards. He said, "So interesting, did you think about this or that? And what effects does it have on bile acid homeostasis?" I mean, things that I hadn't even begun to think about. And then about a month later, he sent me this letter, which I'm going to read parts of. He enjoyed your talk very much. It was written in 2011. So dear Nick, I enjoyed your talk very much. I chaired a session on intestinal absorption at the International Physiology Congress in 1971. So that's 40 years previously. And met Frigyes Verzar, former of the University of Szeged in Hungary, who I had appointed as honorary chairman. I have a copy of Verzar's monograph published in 1936, which summarizes what is known about intestinal absorption. In this book is a nice picture of the time course of chylomicron formation and release based on oil-related things. So he sent me the picture. I'm not sure if you're seeing this. So this is the time course of intestinal lipid droplet formation and chylomicron assembly that Alan had pulled out of his records from 40 years previously. Anyway, here's the thing. So he says, this is always nice to do for emeritus professors who no longer feel useful. A typically self-effacing gesture. So I was moved by his generosity and enthusiasm for science and his willingness to go the extra mile to make young scientists feel welcome and supported. And these are gifts. The last thing I want to say is one of the most memorable events for me personally is to have been invited as the Alan Hofmann lecturer at Johns Hopkins a couple of years ago, and sadly Alan could not attend that, but this is nice to complete the circle. So thanks for including me, and best wishes to everyone.
Thanks, Nick. Okay, that's great. Yeah.
That was lovely. Thank you, Nick. One thing that always struck me about Alan was his encyclopedic knowledge. There was nothing that he didn't know about bile acids, at least, and probably most other things too. So next up to say a few words, we have Jan Lilienau from Lund University. I think Jan spent some time in Alan's lab some time back. Jan, are you there?
Yes, yes, I'm here. And thank you very much for letting me say a few words. I spent 3 years with Alan Hofmann in San Diego from 1988 to 1991. First time it was part of a PhD and became a postdoc. I first asked Alan if I could come and spend some time in his laboratory for half a year, and he answered me, well, fine, you can come half a year, but a year is 3 times better. And I ended up being there for 3 years. It was a fantastic time. Alan was always so generous and also a very kind person. He always very enthusiastic, and the atmosphere in the laboratory was wonderful. And it truly has made a big difference in my career. I didn't continue to do research as much as many of the others of you have done, but he still was very supportive and would never say anything negative about that. So that was very, very nice. I was very pleased to hear previously in this celebration about the time in Lund, and this is correct. I'm myself living in Lund, and I've been living here pretty much all my life. And Alan was here at a very early time. That was actually before I moved to Lund, because I moved here in 1964. And he did research with Bengt Borgström, and Alan was actually the first PhD student of Bengt Borgström. In the very early 60s, Bengt Borgström became professor of physiological chemistry in 1960, and Alan did his PhD here. One little anecdotal thing I'd like to say was that when I came to Alan in 1988, I asked him, Alan, why haven't you put a PhD? You only write MD after your name. Why not PhD? And he looked at me, why should I do that? Well, you did a research in Sweden and you did a PhD. There's the equivalent of that. So it was actually after that he put that on. And as mentioned, he was also here in 2015 in the end of May together with Heli to receive, to become a Jubilee Doctor, which you're invited to 50 years after your promotion, and he was promoted in 1965. I also love to mention Heli. Heli has been the companion of Alan for a very long time, and I get a little mood here because Alan loved his wife extremely much, and Heli always called him Snooky, and I think this Snooky is so sweet, and I think that Alan loved to be called that also. So thank you very much for sharing a few words about this remarkable man who has made a tremendous difference to so many of us, and he was also a very kind man. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Jan.
Thanks, Jan. I think next up we have Verena Keitel. Verena, are you here? Oh, you're muted, Verena.
Okay, do you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm a very late addition to the biologic field. So I met Alan in 2000 at an AASLD. At that time, there was still a hepatobiliary transport meeting, and Alan was already a legend in the field of bile acids. And I was a young MD, only shortly above 20 years old, and he actually talked to me. So this was what Alan is. He was a legend, but he did talk to the MD students, and he listened to you and he gave you advice. And I became closer to him through all the biolacid meetings, to our nice meetings at Gustav's home in Austria. And you will have slides from that later on in the slideshow. And he was just so full of life. So I was also able to dance with him on the table in one of those Austrian parties. And yeah, that's all I want to say. He's a legend, but he talked to everybody. He helped everybody. You could always ask him. And he was introduced as a person who always knows the answer. And if he doesn't know, there is no answer. So thank you very much. And best wishes to Haley. She was always there as well. And also full of life. Thank you.
Thanks, Verena.
Thanks, Verena. Right. So the next person who wanted to speak, unfortunately, couldn't make it here, but he sent a video. So this is Henri Duboc from Paris, and this may be a bit quiet. Okay, but if I can share this screen with you and we listen, okay, you may need to turn up your volume.
It was in 2005, the very first time I heard the name of Alan Hofmann. It was for my master's degree when I had to start to work, and first step in the lab, the boss, Dominique Ranteau, said to me, okay, you read this paper. It was the first time I can see that you can give a funny title to a scientific paper. That was very new for me. Second, in 2012, I came to UCLA following my fellowship with Yvette Taché, and she said to me, okay, you drive to San Diego, and you go to see Alan Hofmann, he will save you time. I was intimidated, in fact, really. And so I took my car. It was very funny, because his wife opened the door, and she said, oh, I think we were supposed to see an old and boring scientist. I had a wonderful moment in a restaurant, and then we start to work, and I show him my data, and we exchange about science and a lot of things, and suddenly he hung up the phone. It was some person very famous in biolacid field in Europe, and she was calling for advice, and he gave him, and he said freely, you should do this, you should do that. What I have learned this day is that the goal when you're a scientist is not to be a person, is to become a book that anyone can open. You have to be knowledgeable, available, and open. I think that when I came back, I felt different. I felt maybe I felt small, because he was to see this incredible mind, interested finally by one thing, my knowledge, my reality. And I felt small but ground in the same time, and I remember him as a man with a rare power, which we could call generous science. So thank you again to Alan Hofmann.
So once again, Henri would have preferred to have been here today himself, but I think he's in clinic, so he couldn't make it, so he made that video for us.
So sentiments that we can all share.
Yeah. Oh, so next up, let me check my list. We have got, a good friend of Alan's from the University of Aarhus. It's Suzanne Keiding. Suzanne, are you there?
I'm here.
Hi, Suzanne.
Thank you. I have two slides that I have sent to you.
Oh, do you have them there? Can you share yourself?
Yeah, I can. That doesn't matter that much. I can just talk. I had noticed, I'm a medical doctor from Denmark, and I had noticed Alan's enthusiasm and knowledge for many years. And for quite a few years ago, I was involved, I'm a medical doctor and involved in taking care of liver patients, and then doing science in positron emission tomography of liver function, and having done various projects. I talked to Alan of doing some bile acid kinetics, and we had heated debate on how to label the bile acids, and we succeeded in making a C11 methyl cholylsarcosine CSAR. Yeah, there it is. Thank you. And we made a few studies, but this is the most recent one published in Journal of Hepatology this year. And we studied cholylsarcosine kinetics in patients who got obeticholic acid in a double-blind placebo-controlled study. And we showed that OCA increased in influx, hepatic blood flow, and remarkably, the transport of CSAR from the hepatocytes into the biliary canaliculae. That was the first study of this kind. And Alan was enthusiastic and stimulating. And he also, I have one more slide. He visited also with Heli, Aarhus, doesn't matter. And we had a beautiful walk along the beach. There we are in Aarhus, and I'm so grateful to the work and friendship with Alan, and send my best greetings also to Heli. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, Suzanne, and thank you, Stephen, for finding those slides. So we're getting towards the end now. So I know that Rohit Lumbar wants to speak, so he can go next. Then Chandu Barden and David Shapiro will end up. But if there's anybody else who wants to say a few words, do you think you can put your hand up or send us a chat message, okay, to say that you want to say something? So Anthea perhaps could say something at the end after we've had the slideshow, maybe,
Yeah.
and maybe Cecilia as well.
And Nick, we can see that you're there. We had you scheduled for earlier on, but we'll make sure to get you on in a couple of minutes.
Yes, indeed. Yep. Okay, so shall we have Rohit Lumbar now, who's head of hepatology at UC San Diego?
Thank you, Julian, and thank you, Stephen, for organizing this. And I'm going to talk about Ellen as a mentor. I've known Ellen since I came to UCSD 2007, and I thought that I always felt whenever I would meet Ellen that I am his favorite hepatologist and faculty at UCSD. But just hearing words from all of you, I think we all felt that whenever we saw Ellen. One of the things he did for me was, even as a fellow, he would meet with me every 3 months at the faculty club, and many of you may remember at UCSD. And we will discuss our research. My research is on non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And he was such a visionary that he brought me closer to bile acids as well, although that's not where I started. And so a few things that Ellen did, which I would like to share with you, was every time we would meet, he was always interested in what I was doing. He never missed a single talk. And I don't know how he knew that I was giving a talk anywhere at UCSD. Many of like my division chief may not know, but Ellen always knew, and he was always there. And typically 5 to 10 minutes before, sitting in the first row, and always had a question that would probe me for many weeks. In my last month of fellowship, Ellen connected me with a company, a Japanese company that was making something in bile acids and bile acid sequestrants. And even before I started my faculty, I got a big grant. It was $1 million grant for a fellow. And I won't write to them, and they were ready to write the check because I couldn't have accepted it as a PI. So I waited till July 1st to send them the details, and it was all because of Ellen that he made that connection for me. He would come to my office when I became faculty and he would ask me to recite my papers. So I would read my papers aloud, and Alan would then say that this helps in really understanding the flow. And since then, I've been doing that on all my manuscripts, and I'm trying to pass that forward. Alan also said one thing, one time during these lunches at faculty meeting, I was really frustrated because I wasn't able to get one of my papers published. And Alan told me, which was very humbling, that you shouldn't be worried if your good papers don't get published. The day you should get worried is when your bad papers get published easily. And I still remember that. Alan also told me a lot of things about integrity as a clinical researcher, some of the issues he faced during his life, and he was brutally honest. And I still remember all those today. In his honor, at UCSD, we will do a memorial, probably sometime closer to DDW. More details will follow. And we would also potentially set up an endowed lectureship where I would like to send an invite to all of you. But please stay tuned for something that we will do at UCSD and GI sometime around DDW. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I was on mute then. Okay, so that's great. So we'll look forward to hearing more. I think that we knew that when we set this up, that this would be the first of many tributes, many celebrations of Alan's life. So Nick Russo, would you like to talk next? Is he there?
Yes, I can. Nick, you there? You're muted, Nick. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can now.
Yeah. Thank you for including me. I'd like to begin by publicly expressing, and I've done it privately, my sincere condolences to Helly, Anthea, and Cecilia, who've lost a husband and a father, and to all the rest of you who have lost a great friend. Every now and then, if you're lucky as I've been in life, someone shows up unexpectedly that changes the course of that life in a unique, lasting, and meaningful way. And Alan was that person for me. Those are the two sentences in a letter I wrote to Alan when Anthea told me about how dire the situation was. Unfortunately, it didn't get there in time for Anthea to read it to Alan. Other than Jim Boyer, I suspect my relationship with Alan could be the longest. I met Alan in July 1972. I had just started my GI fellowship at Mayo, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my future. But as things often happen in life, serendipitous events make those decisions for you. Someone got drafted who was supposed to be on a T-32 training grant. Turns out that that individual is someone named Al Shaya, who many of you know, because he became world famous in autoimmune hepatitis. But Al was gone. I wasn't sure what to do. They offered me the position in the GI unit at the time. And the GI unit was booming then. In addition to Alan, Bill Summerskill was the head of the unit. Les Schoenfield and John Thistle were working on dissolution of gallstones. Sid Phillips was beginning to define what bile acids got absorbed where. Gene DiMagno was studying the pancreas, and Bill Goh was introducing radioimmunoassays for GI hormones.
they assigned me to Alan. I walked into his office and he said to me, well, I guess I'm stuck with you, Nick. And frankly, that was completely appropriate because I had absolutely no research training. And in fact, I wasn't even sure I wanted to be a scientist. But he took me in the lab, and the next 3 years were the most exciting of my life. He taught me how to ask interesting questions, develop experiments to address those questions, and to find the questions that the answers to the questions generated. On Friday afternoons, we would have a lab meeting. And Alan, with his brilliant creativity, decided to name that lab meeting the BARF meeting. BARF, in this context, stood for something different than what you think it might stand for. It stood for bile acids are really fun. And that was our lab meeting every Friday. Vin Chadwick was there, Bill Balistreri, so many people who have become famous subsequently. I was in the lab 3 years, and towards the end of my second year, after a BARF meeting, Alan invited me over to his beautiful home in Southwest Rochester, where I think, if I recollect, Anthea and Cecilia grew up. And he said, come on over, Nick, I want to talk to you about your future. Let's have a few beers. He said, if you're serious about science, you need more training. And you need more training in cell and molecular biology. I said, you're right, I need more training in cell and molecular biology. So what happens now? He said, we're going to recruit you to Mayo, but before you start on faculty, we're sending you away. And we want you to visit 3 places: Yale for a membrane biology program, the NIH, and the Rockefeller. I went to the NIH, didn't like it. I went to the Rockefeller and loved it. And I never visited Yale. Sorry, Jim. I never visited Yale because I was so taken by the Rockefeller. And there was an appropriateness to that, since Alan had studied there. And he put me in the lab of Christian de Duve, who had won the Nobel Prize the year before for his discovery of the lysosomes. And not a bad place to start. While I was there, Bill and Alan moved to San Diego. And it's interesting how people were much more likely to want to visit San Diego when Alan was there than they were to visit Rochester when Alan was there. It might have had something to do with the weather. I suspect that was a big factor. And actually, Bill and Alan invited me to San Diego to see if I would take a faculty position there. I was going out the door to get on the plane, and I got a call that Bill had died, and all recruitment was put on hold. Anyway, I went back to Rochester. I actually inherited Alan's office and his lab. And during the rest of my career, he was a constant source of inspiration, support, constructive criticism, and brilliant insights in some of the work that I've done. So he's truly a hero to me. And this is a picture of him that hangs in my office to remind me how much of an impact he's had on my career. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. Yes, indeed. You must have known him for a long, long time, and he was a major influence. I know somebody else who has known him for a long time and wants to say a few words is David Olpers. So, David.
Thanks, Julian. It's interesting to me. I'm not a bile acid person. I never worked, well, I worked a little bit with Alan on it, but my association with Alan is quite different, but it's very similar to all of you others. And thank you for asking me to be here, and my condolences to Helly and all the family for a loss of a wonderful and fantastic person. But my association with Alan goes back to the early 70s. So I must be one of the people who knows him the longest. And Alan and Ted Bayless from Johns Hopkins had convinced the AGA that they needed to educate the physicians more in basic physiology. And with this in mind, they had founded something called the Undergraduate Teaching Project, which some of you may remember. This unit made slides to try to determine what the basic physiology was that gastroenterologists needed to know. And it had been going for a few years and produced a few units, but they decided they needed to get more people involved. And Alan and Ted asked me to join. And there are a couple of things about Alan that are similar to what all the rest of you have seen. Right from the moment I joined, Alan treated me as a young person who he wanted to help in any way possible. And he was just so welcoming and warm, and his usual flamboyant self. It was just amazing to be associated with him. But the thing I learned right away from Alan was, in our discussions, that he was interested in absolutely everything. It wasn't just bile acids. And he wasn't just interested in everything. He had the unique ability that many wonderful investigators have of being able to think clearly and ask good questions in areas that were completely apart from those that he was expert in. And he could get us all to think much more clearly about the areas that we thought we were expert in. Alan had a wonderful way of letting you know how really ignorant you were and how much, but he did it in such a nice way that you would never be concerned with it at all. The second thing I wanted to share with you is that as the undergraduate teaching project went along and it got involved in many more things, Ted Bayless was the chair of it, but Ted had to go on to other things. Alan just decided, as he did in so many things in life, where he just took charge of wherever he was and made everything happen the way he wanted to. He just decided that I should be the chair of the undergraduate teaching project. It's not something that I had wanted to do, but when Alan said to me, "You're it, I've decided you're it," you all know, I couldn't turn him down. There was no way you could refuse Alan. And so that I spent a lot of time on the undergraduate teaching project, much of it with Alan, although he dropped off towards the end. The spirit of that group and the support that he gave me and the direction he gave to put me in charge of it are all, I think, aspects of Alan's personality that have been repeated here many times. I remained very friendly with Alan, seeing him at meetings all the time, never at bile acid meetings, I must say. And he was the same warm, gregarious, almost off the top kind of person that you can have. And we saw Helly many times, mostly Alan. And one thing about Alan's sentimentality that I can share with you is when I first joined the undergraduate teaching project, since I didn't know if wives were invited along, I asked if I could bring my sweetie. And they said, of course. And Alan and Ed Moore, who was on the committee, from there on, called my wife sweetie. And many of the pictures that we have, I've looked back on them, and my wife is next to Alan in every one of them. They had a special relationship. So I want to thank Alan for being who he was for so many of us. And my condolences to all the family. We've really lost a wonderful friend and a wonderful mentor.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, David. So
David.
I've just dug out this, which of course I can't show you now because of my background, but you can see here's the undergraduate teaching project, and here's the #1 bile acids. Yep. So okay, we all looked at that. Okay, so a couple more people. Okay, so my list says that Susan Cummings would like to speak as well. So, Susan, would you like to unmute and say a few words, please?
Well, most importantly, my deepest sympathy to Helly and the entire family. And I think my remarks are really directed to the family because I see from this memorial that all of his colleagues really appreciate his amazing attributes and genius. So I just want to make sure that the family really, I think they do from seeing everyone speak, but every single remark is amplified by 100% because what we're saying in words was not even the beginning of what he was like when he was in person. Dr. Hofmann brought me from Montreal in 1982 to the GI Fellowship at UCSD, and he also changed my life. And other than my family, he was probably the most important influence in my life and my career. And I tried to think of it. So I just wanted to say, because everyone said how brilliant and energetic and generous of time and ideas he was. And I'll just give you a few examples so that I won't repeat everything. But in clinical conference, as a clinician at UCSD, he would always be present. And he, even if he didn't know about the disease we were discussing in great detail that day, he would probably ask the most probing, interesting question of the day during conference. And it would be like you turn your head around and say, how is that even possible? And it just goes to show you the breadth of his inquisitiveness and of course of his knowledge. And another thing I wanted to say that other people haven't mentioned is energy was boundless. We know that. But I'll just tell you a little secret that you might not know, that after he would go to your parties or whatever, he would be back in the lab and in his office at 10 at night. As a fellow, when you have to be on call and things like that, you see that he was just, his brain was working every second. Like we were saying, he was doing his dictation in his car, and people would hear all kinds of extraneous noise. Well, he would enjoy himself at an outing and then come back to the lab or his office and be working till the wee hours of the morning. And it was just something that I've never seen before or later. And then the last thing I want to share that might be slightly different from everyone else is that he had a filing system in the back office with at least 20 filing cabinets that were about 5 feet high and very, very deep. And if he was having a discussion with you, he could just go into the filing cabinet in 1 second and pick out the article and just give it to you and say, okay, this is what I want you to read. And it is a true beyond genius. I mean, we've all met, I'm sure many of you are brilliant people, but the extent to which his brain functioned, it was just something, something really magical. And of course, it was an incredible gift to be allowed to work with him and see this and interact with him and share, his ideas. And I must say that he will leave a huge void in the world. And as we've mentioned, he'll be sorely missed, and we will definitely miss him. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you very much, Susan. Yeah, very, very nice words. So almost finished. with the people that we know that want to speak. So Chandu Barden, I think you wanted to say a few words, and then David Shapiro, and then we'll have a slideshow. So is Chandu there, Chandu Barden? You're on mute, maybe, Chandu. Okay, I have to unmute Chandu. Okay, so Chandu was professor of gastroenterology, worked at Rotherham for a long time, and was a mentor to me working on bile acid diarrhea in England.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Thank you so much. I've taken Stephen Keely's instructions literally and will try and submit
You're
my
probably the first person to do so.
No, I regarded Professor Alan Hofmann as a true Renaissance man, the term used to describe some of the great Italian artists in the Middle Ages. His ability to bring ideas together was amazing. Such was the clarity of his mind. But more than that, much more than that, he would then develop these into other products, either for investigation or for treatment. My involvement with bile acids came about quite by accident. My special area of interest was stomach acid-related disorders, but by chance I got interested in this field when the CCAT retention test became available. Importantly, this test did not require collecting feces for several days and then measuring the bile acids. It was a no-touch technique which appealed to me. I had the pleasure of meeting Alan at several DDW conferences. On one occasion, we got engrossed with my two colleagues in such intense discussions that he had to hurry back to tea because guests were coming, and in the process developed chest pain. We visited Heli at their home and looked at the wonderful paintings that has adorned them. One in particular struck me, circles with splashes of white, spaced in such a way. And Ellie agreed, yes, this was intended to be the Fibonacci sequence. Alan, polymath, inspirational teacher, and a truly great man. Rest in peace.
Thank you, Chandu.
Thanks, Chandu. That was lovely. So I think we have one more person to speak, and then we have a video, and then maybe if anyone from Alan's family would like to say anything after the video, that'd be nice, but don't feel pressure to. You don't have to if you don't like to. Okay, so the last speaker that we'd like to have on is David Shapiro, a good friend of Alan's. David, are you still here?
I'm certainly here. So thank you. First of all, thank you, Steve and Julian, for arranging this. Of the many hundreds of Zoom meetings I must have been on in the last couple of years, this is truly the best and most special of them all. I think it's remarkable. I've counted people from 9 different countries. I think the fact that there are lots of august people, former presidents of the Royal College of Physicians in the UK, august professors, chancellors of medical schools, that didn't surprise me, but I think Alan would probably get most pleasure from noting that there are all kinds of research fellows whose careers are in front of them, and that would give him, I think, probably the greatest pleasure. I've learnt a lot today, but I could have learnt more had Alan been here. I never knew that Verena Keitel danced on tables. I wasn't surprised that Alan had. So that was something new. And while we've seen some wonderful photographs, I'm sure I know we'll see more in the slideshow. And while I'm trying to wonder whether that was a camel or a dromedary that Alan was sitting on, we all know that Alan could give us the publication where he looked at the bile acids and the phylogenetic derivation of the bile acids of camels and dromedaries. And his knowledge went so much more than my superficial knowledge. So Alan was unquestionably a friend to everybody here. That's why we're all here. And Ulrich Boyers, who I know is here, once made a comment to me and some others that if you did research in bile acids, it was impossible that Alan Hofmann had not personally helped you in your work, selflessly and generously. He had many recognitions. I was pleased that we were working on an application with the beta-cholic acid of his career's work on new therapeutics, working on the mechanisms of bile acids. And I know that gave him a lot of satisfaction. We were very pleased at Mark Hofmann, Mark Przansky and I to see that we had Intercept endowed an ASDLD Alan Hofmann Research Foundation, which I know gave him great pleasure as well as us. The one thing people haven't particularly touched on, I think, was that Alan was also a modest and a humble man, right? For all of his knowledge, he would challenge you, but he didn't toot his own horn. And I remember him telling me, well, we used to go for lunch quite often in San Diego, talking about him driving an ice cream truck to earn money when he was an undergraduate, and he wasn't a very good salesman. I think he said it was the music was the only way he managed to sell ice cream. And that when he went to NIH as a fellow, one of his supervisors said, when he first arrived, he said, yes, I'm going to be watching you. I don't actually think you're going to amount to very much. And I think maybe you ought to think about a career in family practice. Well, I don't know who it was who said that, but I think Alan certainly proved him wrong. I think a lot of us feel it was a privilege to being mentored by him and also to have been his friend. And he will be missed by his personal family and also by his scientific family. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Yes, yes, indeed. I think we all feel as though we're his worldwide family. Okay, so we have put together a slideshow here. So if I share this screen and it all works all right, you'll be able to see this. Okay, share. Okay, so there's a soundtrack as well. Yeah. And let's hope it's going to
Just to
run.
say, it might be good for everybody to turn off their cameras while this is rolling, because it might help to go smoother.
Yep.
And I think we're finished now. I hope some of you have watched this to the end, at least one or two. I hope you have enjoyed it. It's a story of a life with many aspects. I think we're considering that somebody was above average, he did all right, and maybe he helped the human condition a bit. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, ich bin froh, dass ich das mit dir gemacht habe, weil danach
Jetzt pass auf, warte.
Was machst du denn jetzt?
So I want to thank Julian. He's put in an awful lot of work in making that video. I think it was amazing. So I think we've come close to the end of the day now. Would anybody from Alan's family like to say something?
Yes, I'm Haley, and Julian, thank you very much for composing this whole lecture, the whole memorial on TV. I was watching it here at my friend Marion's in La Jolla, and it was very well done, and I'm touched to tears. And thank you very much for all the participants, to meet you again on the screen. And I hope I am going to see yours when you come to San Diego and visit me. Now I'm alone and I have more time for visitors. Okay? Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you, Henny.
I have just a few words. Y'all, first of all, you're all a hard act to follow. And I'm in no way a scientist, so this is just some perspective from me. Some of you I've met many years ago. Some of you I've only corresponded with. Over the past few weeks, I've received many emails from you telling me about the impact Dad had on your careers. Thank you for that. And thank you, Julian and Stephen, for organizing this. My father worked a lot. As a young child, I remember him working in his cozy study in our house in Rochester, Minnesota, classical music playing in the background and a fire in the fireplace. He was in his element. That's a nice memory for me. He traveled a lot. I often said that at any given moment, I wasn't sure what state or country he was in. He came home with a lot of hotel keys. Much later in his career, he would tell me he was going to write one more paper and close up his lab. Then the next year, he would tell me the same thing. He never really stopped working. I helped Dad go through his emails before he died. In his last days, he was still offering advice about bile acid research. He worked a lot. He loved it. He loved the intellectual stimulation of working with brilliant scientists like you. He loved his colleagues. He loved the science. He loved the friendship. He was so appreciative of the opportunities and hospitality he was shown all around the world. I came across a letter of his where he'd written, "We were so lucky that we got paid to have fun and occasionally help the human condition." Thank you all.
Thank you, Anthea.
Thank you, Anthea. Cecilia?
Hi.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, sure. Am I muted?
Does Julian?
Yes.
I want to thank everyone. For me, this whole process has been very healing. And I'm deeply moved by everyone's intent to keep his legacy alive. While Nick LaRusso may have inherited the lab, I inherited the bow tie collection, if you can see. So
Underdog.
we're going to make every effort to keep that alive. And I'm just very grateful for everyone's contribution. Thank you.
I'm Isabel, one of his granddaughters, and this was so this was so humbling and moving, and I really appreciate everyone being here and keeping his legacy and his memory alive and helping me get to know him more through his work and his impact on your lives. So thank you.
Isabel, your grandfather was a world-famous great person. Carolyn, I think, wanted to say something too.
Yes. Well, I want to just say as well as Anthea and Cece.
That's one of Helen's daughters.
I'm sorry. I just want to say, as Anthea and Cece did, we're from the family. I'm the stepsister. I'm Helly's daughter, and we really appreciate everything you did. It was just so wonderful. I think more than one person was moved to tears, and I was also very happy to see again so many people I know from my childhood and youth. People have come to our house for those really legendary parties, or people I've met on meetings some places. And yes, I think as everybody said, he really influenced our lives. He was so humble. He was incredible. I ended up doing research in the micellar lipid solution field as well with Gustav Baumgartner. And whenever I asked him a question, the first thing was says, I'm not really sure whether I know it. And then he gave you this big explanation. And he was really just so incredible. And thank you everybody really for this wonderful, wonderful memorial. I've never seen anything like that, and never anything that beautiful. And I think Alan would have loved to be there, but maybe he is there with us. So thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn.
I would just like to say a quick thank you. I'm also one of Alan's grandsons, and I wanted to let you all know that I once asked him while I was working on my own dissertation and exhausted, did you ever for a moment doubt your path or feel burnt out with all of your work? And he said, I never worked a day in my life. And I'm sure that was thanks in no small part to you all. Sorry. So I just wanted to share with you that the last time I spoke to him, I know you were in his thoughts. And the last thing that he said to me was that life is in the present. It's with your colleagues and your family, but you'll run out of time faster than you think, and you need to use your talents to make people happy. And that was the last thing he said to me, and it's very clear that he did that, and then he made you all happy. I know that you all made him very happy too, so thank you.
Thank you, Hunter, for those. Yeah, that's very nice to hear. Okay, well, thank you all for coming along here. Okay, we planned an hour's celebration. We've gone on for two and a half hours. Okay, so that's a measure of the man. He's two and a half times sort of what we think he is, maybe even more. Okay, so thank you all.
Bravo.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Alan, particularly.
Thanks to Julian and Stephen.
Thank
Thank you all.
Thanks for doing your work on behalf of all of us.
It's great to see you all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. I was watching it here in a friend's house, and it was a great memorial service. I'm touched to tears. Thank you all for participating.
Thanks, Helly.
Husband.
Great to see you.
Take care of this.
Yeah.
Lots of love to you.
Forza Eli,
all the
viva
family.
Ala.
Thank you, Helly. This is Mel.
Oh, thank you.
My best wishes to you, my dear.
Thank
It was so
you.
touching.
Thank you, Mel.
Bye, Aldo.
See you, Aldo.
Bye, Chandu.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Dag, tschüss.
Thank you, everybody, for staying.
What time is it in England?
6:30ish.
Okay. Good night.
8 hours. Good night.
Oh, late afternoon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye. Garima, please just come through. Bye-bye all. I just want to turn the thing off.
So I'm going to end the meeting now, so then I can save the recording.
That's right. You have to do that. Okay. Thank you for recording it. Okay, that should fill up your hard drive, I think. And I think you saved the chat as well. I think
It should do, yeah.
All right. Well, goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, Aldo. Goodbye, Suzanne. Chandu.
Bye-bye, 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 everyone. God bless.